Hi gang, Rob here. It is the evening of 3 October 2016. I got me a big long white box here. It says Lon Humphrey Custom Knives on top of it. And before I open this and tell you what's inside, I got to tell you a little story. You know, no good knife video comes without a good story. I was at the Bark River Grind-In, the 16th, 17th of September. And there was a knife by Bark River that had just been released with much fanfare. It sold out in like an hour and a half on every retailer. It was a Pete Kohler design called the Grizzly. A big, long, nasty-looking Bowie with a sexy tapered fuller, and I think it had been released just 2 or 3 days before the Grind-In started. And the place was just abuzz with talk about the Grizzly. There were some Grizzlies laying around. Nobody got to build a Grizzly. You know, it was kind of this unicorn of a knife that came and went, and we were all just lucky to look at one, to have one in our hand for a minute. And I had been over at Derek Bone's shop, Knife Ship Free, earlier in the afternoon on Friday of the Grind-In, and we were looking through his inventory of Lon Humphrey custom knives, and Derek told me Lon has a bunch of stuff ready to come out, and Derek has a good bit of Lon's inventory from the last few months still in stock. And Derek said, man, I really would like to get a couple of these knives in your hands for review. And I've had a few of Lon's knives in for sharpening, and I generally like them. So I was kind of excited to do that. We were going to go back to the shop and pick out a couple. Then Friday evening at dinner at the Grind-In, Lon Humphrey himself was there. You guys remember seeing him in the Bark River video, the Grind-In video. And he had with him, you guys saw a glimpse of it, his new model that's coming out tomorrow. So this is Monday night, the 3rd of October. Tomorrow, Tuesday the 4th, this knife will be released. And it's called the Gunfighter Bowie. You ready for this, guys? Yeah, this is the very one that Lon had in his hand the night we did that video. Oh, you kidding me? Of course, it might be a little improved since you last saw it. This is sort of a pre-production prototype. It's it's pretty cool. But I think I told Lon that I wanted to get some of his stuff in front of the camera, but once I had seen this, I told him, I said, man, I'd really like to have one of those for review as soon as Derek gets some. Okay. You guys know me. A sexy, well-proportioned Bowie knife. So Lon filed that away, and he was a little busy over the weekend of the Grind-In. Lon's getting married, I think, on the 21st or 22nd of October. He's getting married to a beautiful young woman named Cassie. They're getting married in Escanaba, although Lon is from Newark, Ohio. He's got a lot of extended knife family in Escanaba, and he wants them all there at the wedding. And pretty cool. Cassie's never really had a great father figure in her life, and Mike Stewart of Bark River Knives is going to be giving Cassie away at the wedding. So I want you guys all to pray for Lon Humphrey and his new bride Cassie as they embark on their lives together. And frankly, Lon was a little distracted from the Grind-In, making wedding plans, and he wasn't able to be there on Sunday morning. But When I showed up on Sunday morning, walked into Mike's office, there was this big white box sitting on his desk, and he said, "Hey, Rob, I got something for you. Somebody left this for you." And I opened it up, and this is what I found inside. Now, this is going to be a knife review, and this knife was a gift. So, full disclosure. Now, I can tell you this, guys. Yes, Lon gave me the knife to review and to keep. However, I'd already spent some time with it, and this review was going to be a rave whether I had to buy one or send one back. Didn't matter. And this is a rave. So here's what we got. You guys starting to get a feel for what's going on in Escanaba, Michigan? You know, I've been talking about custom knife makers moving there to set up shop. Sort of getting some business help from Mike Stewart and his team. They call each other their family. Yeah, that's all going on. It's all true. A bunch of custom knife makers sort of getting into mid-tech or low-volume production of fixed blade knives. And some of them are moving to Escanaba. Some of them just show up from time to time. It's an interesting project we're going to keep you posted on. So what do we got here? Before I start gushing about this knife more, let's measure it. We got about an 8.5 inch blade, fashioned of 1095 steel. I think it's about a 1/4 inch thick. Let's see if I can measure this and look at the camera. It is a 1/4 inch thick stock. The handle length is about 6 1/8 inches. Yeah, 6 1/8 inches. This one is done in a beautiful dark curly maple. 2 big old pins and a lanyard tube. Generous handle. Now, if you guys are familiar with Lon's work, you know that he works most often in 1095. This is a 1095 blade. It is done in his Brute de Forge style. And you'll notice the flats are marked up pretty well with hammer marks from the forging process. Now, you won't be able to tell because of the swedge, but this knife actually is forged with a distal taper before Lon ever puts a grinder to it. So it does taper significantly toward the tip. There's your stock thickness at the spine, and then I don't know if you can really perceive that it's thinner from hilt to where the swedge starts, but it is just a little bit. And then serious distal taper going on as we get to the tip. And I think if you look, this is full stock thickness. And then notice if we just sort of carry that line through, it sort of matches up with where the swedge line is, and you can see how much thinner that knife is toward the tip. Yeah, it's called the Gunfighter Bowie. You know, let's just expand on that name a little bit. If it were, let's say 1885, 1890, you're a man who makes his living with, let's say your single action army 1873 Colt revolver, you might have one of these strapped to your offside hip, or maybe cross draw with a frog through your belt. You know, even if you had 2 of them Colts, you're only sporting 12 rounds without having to reload. You might just reach for something like this. You might just grab it in an upside down grip, like old Jim Bowie himself at the sandbar. This knife, and ones like it from 130 years ago or so, were designed for one thing. Yeah, they could do other things, but they were designed for one thing. Parting flesh, maybe some ribs, making contact with some vital organs, ending a life, ending a fight. This knife is light and fast. The point of balance is right at the front of the handle. I mean right at the front of the handle. So if you're back with all 4 fingers on the handle, everything's safely tucked in behind this guard. The knife is going to be just a little front heavy, but still plenty light and fast. If you're up here in this forward choil, maybe doing some work around the campsite after you've dispatched with your enemies, this part of the blade through here is going to be well suited for some fine work and super controllable. The thumb falling nicely over the front of the handle. Just a very, very well designed knife. A big gradual swell coming back to the pommel area of the knife makes it very fast in a slash or a chop type motion. And of course it'll pierce from just about whatever presentation you want it to. You can do it vertical, you can slash on the downstroke, backhand with that slightly upswept clip, making some back cuts with it. Will it do that? Well, almost every Bowie knife with an upswept clip will, even if that swedge isn't sharpened. Let's see. Yeah, it'll grab some stuff. Purpose-built man killer, boar killer, whatever. I learned some things from Mr. Stewart during my trip to Escanaba for the grind-in, and I'm glad I had this conversation with him because I think this knife is an excellent illustration of one of the points of knife design, specifically fixed blade knife design, that Mike was trying to impart to me. I'm like a sponge when I talk to him. I'm just looking for knowledge. He respects a lot of very old and masterful knife designers. Webster Marbles, Bill Moran, Bob Lovelace. And he talks about this concept in a well-executed knife design. He calls it tension. There has to be an aesthetic, emotional, romantic tension between the shape of the handle and the shape of the blade and how they relate to each other. You see that here? It's kind of hard to explain. I'm not sure that it's objectively quantifiable, but you know it when you see it, don't you? And frankly, guys, although I really respect Lon's work as a forger of knife steel and a maker of hunting knives, I really haven't ever seen this kind of design prowess from Lon before. And you've heard me say it. There is no set shape for a clip point Bowie knife blade, but there has to be a properness of proportion. This knife has it in spades. Oh, so beautiful. Now this is kind of a pre-production prototype from Lon. You'll notice the grind rises a little bit in the flat as you approach the back of the blade. I must be reflecting into my light sensor. And where he's got his Humphrey stamp, it's been a little bit obliterated by the primary bevel grind. But I think you get the idea. One thing I will say that I must give Lon props for on this knife, if you watched my review of his Muley Hunter, I mentioned that his grinds like to wander a little bit, especially behind the cutting edge. And the reason I sharpened this knife after I did some testing with it wasn't so much because it was dull. Actually, I did most of the work in this area of the blade, and there was really no edge damage whatsoever. I really wanted to see, using my Edge Pro, sharpening the knife at a fixed angle, I wanted to see how symmetrical and how consistent I could get the bevel width. And I think you'll see, guys, if you look, come in pretty tight here. Our bevel is the narrowest right at the finger choil, and it just gradually increases in width, meaning the thickness of the blade behind the edge increases a little bit as we get to the tip where we want some strength. But notice the symmetry side to side, if you can remember what the other side looked like. No waviness to this grind. It doesn't wander even a little bit. It just does what a Bowie knife should do. It just gradually thickens ever so slightly to the tip. Bravo. I think this is some of Lon's best work to date. The finish quality on this knife, a little better than we're used to seeing from Lon. The texture and finish on the primary bevel grind and the swedge grind are both beautifully consistent. He has polished the spine and the exposed area of the full tang everywhere, including in the forward finger choil. The polish isn't perfect, but it is bright and shiny and smooth. Again, better than we're used to seeing from him. I don't know what these knives are going to sell for. You guys are going to have to get on knifeshipfree.com tomorrow and find out. I would expect them to be, I don't know, what, in the mid 200s probably? Which, you know, compared to a similarly sized Bark River, will be $100 or so less, which I think is where the price point ought to be. Of course, having said that, I don't know where they're going to be. Just a phenomenal knife in hand. In any grip you want to employ. I will say one thing, guys. This 1095, as Lon heat treats it, is no slouch. Material came off grudgingly. Didn't just fall off like, you know, it didn't just come off like butter like 1095 does generally, you know, when it's hardened in that 56, 57 range. I don't know the hardness that Lon heat treats these two, but I had very little burr formation even on the lower grits when sharpening, and although it strops up rather easily, you know, hogging material down in that the 140 or 220 range of grits took a while. I think because of the sort of finer grain nature of 1095. But it takes a great polish and a very keen edge. Let's kind of see what this big old slab of 1095 can do. Well, you know what? Before we cut paper with it, I did a little woodwork with it. You guys, you know that I think if you're going to carry a knife this big, not only does it have to be a weapon, but, you know, let's say you're, you know, living your life outside, you're living off a horseback and campsite, you're going to carry this kind of weight, it better be able to do more than kill a man. So I did a little wood chopping with it. Take a look, and we'll come back and cut some paper, see what we got. So guys, while the Gunfighter clearly not designed as a dedicated camp knife or woods blade or bushcraft knife, you know, a survival knife, yes. Fightability, survivability, I would expect from a knife like this. I did some pruning on the spruce trees not too long ago, and oh, this is about a little 3/4 inch branch off one of my spruces that I elevated and limbed up a little bit. Let's see how the Gunfighter does chopping. Just gonna make kind of snap cuts with it. Not bad. Well, let's see how it does. I'm gonna move up to the forward choil. See how it does, like debarking, making some feather sticks. You definitely want to do your business as close to that choil as possible for control. Definitely a little wedgy for this kind of work. Although once you sort of get the angle right, you can make it work. But definitely not as much fun as the chopping. I'd say that'll work. Yeah, it's not a camp knife per se, but if it's your one cutting tool, you can kind of get the job done around the campsite with it, I would say. You can make a fire, you can cut up your victuals, whatever you need to do. And let's see about this edge. Now this is sharpened pretty thick behind the edge, so it's 17 degrees per side with a little tiny 20-degree micro bevel. Of course, I've kind of destroyed this piece of paper, but that's pretty quiet, guys. Now let me get on the good side here. Yeah. Of course, we should cut Natchez Shooter Supply catalog paper with the Gunfighter Bowie. All the way to the tip, she's sharp. Nice and sharp. So get ready, guys. I've been looking for that sort of 8 to 9 inch dedicated fighting Bowie for a couple years, one that I really wanted to buy. So not only did I make one at Bark River, got one from my new buddy Lon, and what a sweetie it is. Keep your eyes on him, fellas. He's part of this consortium of knife makers sharing information, ideas, and learning from each other in Escanaba. Even though Lon's shop is in Newark, Ohio, he spends a lot of time there. And his craft and the development of skills in his craft is coming quickly. I expect to see new stuff and better stuff all the time from Lon. And this one is very special. Don't you think? I didn't even talk about the sheath. Comes in this gorgeous two-tone leather pouch style sheath, all you need for a knife like this. Just the sheer weight alone will make this thing secure. Big old belt loop, a good sized gun belt will fit through there. Or you can go cross draw, where that left of center sort of tilting back at you to be drawn quickly into action with the right hand. Nicely made sheath. Don't know if Lon's making his own sheaths or not, but he's got them embossed with his logo. Just a nicely made carrying device for the Gunfighter Bowie. That's all for this one, my friends. What a piece of work. Grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. And remember, the Word And the Gunfighter Bowie are sharp.